Welcome to RoadPeace's 2021 AGM. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. For those of you who don't know, my name is Nick Simmons and I've been CEO at RoadPeace since 2018. Just a few housekeeping points to begin with. We'll be recording this Zoom webinar. Please use the chat box to ask questions. At the top is the chat icon, which will open up a chat box. And there are also links to key documents that were sent with the meeting link as well, if you want to find those. There will be opportunities to ask two questions. First after Jeremy Leach, our guest speaker, and then again after the impact report that I'll be delivering. Or you can email any questions to info@roadpeace.org and we'll respond and reply as quickly as we can. Although unfortunately we are still only able to meet online and not have a more traditional face-to-face meeting, it's still very good to have this opportunity to spend time together. And I do hope that more familiar activities will return in the coming weeks. Normally, our chair, Cynthia Barlow, delivers this introduction, and I'm sorry to say that we all wish her well and look forward to seeing her soon. I'm very grateful to long-standing member and RoadPeace trustee Nick Atkinson for joining me to lead on the formal business part of our AGM. On a very sad note, I want to share and commemorate the passing of Alistair Hanton, who many of you will know was a long-standing patron, advisor, and member of RoadPeace. Alistair was a committed campaigner for road danger reduction and active travel, who also funded and helped develop our online memorial site. So our condolences are with his family and friends today. RoadPeace is so proud to be the UK's only member-based charity for road crash victims. Our AGM is a valuable opportunity for trustees and staff to hear from our members, to listen to your needs, consult with you around our future priorities, and answer any questions that you might have about the organisation's current activities. RoadPeace is a small charity, but it's made a huge impact in the 29 years since it was founded by Brigid Chowdhury, both in its support, advocacy, and in its campaigning work, improving the way the justice system responds to road death and injury. This has been another difficult year for all charities, with traditional fundraising activities being cancelled or postponed, and other sources of funding being reduced or redeployed to support those affected by COVID-19. The impact, obviously, on our finances has been significant. Our focus has been on ensuring that we continue to deliver support and run local group meetings, which have obviously all moved online. Our helpline has been increasingly busy. We've grown the number of befrienders and we've supported more victims. I'm confident that RoadPeace will continue to deliver our much needed services, campaigns, and grow against, regrettably, a backdrop of increasing need. Even with less congested roads, the latest official figures just released show that there were 1,479 fatalities and 115,333 reported injuries. No one should take any comfort from a small reduction, and the increase in cycling fatalities with 140 deaths is truly shocking, with the awful impact that we know it will have had on so many. RoadPeace exists to help the bereaved and injured at a time when they need it most. We work for justice for those victims and an end to our society's complacency towards suffering so that lessons can be learned and future similar cases prevented. I am deeply grateful to all the volunteers, staff and trustees for their continued support, hard work and commitment. And whilst many of you will already be familiar with our team, for those you have not yet met, you'll find details on our website, and do please feel very free to engage and ask questions email is probably the best method. Use info@roadpeace.org. This year, we welcomed Roberta Kamara as our Support Services Coordinator, and also Simon Faulkner as our Membership and Supporter Engagement Coordinator. And we said goodbye to Chris Daniel, who moved on to a new job in local government. You'll hear some important highlights of the year in our impact report later. And in terms of positive news, I'm also very pleased to report that the RoadPeace now has a newly engraved memorial stone for the National Arboretum. I know that some members have found the condition of the current site upsetting. The new stone will be installed next month and then maintained by the National Arboretum team. This has taken a long time to achieve, and members of the board, particularly Petra Kendall-Rayner, have worked so hard to make sure it was delivered. The new memorial will be officially unveiled at the RoadPeace Wood event in August, and I hope that COVID allowing, members can be invited to attend. So finally, for the moment, thank you again for your support. Whether you give of your time, financially, or both, we are immensely grateful, and we would not be able to continue without. It's now my pleasure to introduce Jeremy Leach, co-founder of Action Vision Zero and a long-time friend of RoadPeace. After his talk, he's happy to take questions. So if you have questions for Jeremy, please use that chat box, and there'll be another opportunity to ask general questions later on. So please try and keep those just to be intended for Jeremy. But right now, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thanks so much, Nick. That's really kind of you. Can you see the presentation? Lovely, that's great. Well, look, thank you so much for inviting me to speak at this this important event, and we're really grateful to you. Thanks so much for letting us look at what we feel is a lost decade in reducing casualties on UK roads, and sort of going to talk a bit about that, if I may, and then, you know, look forward in a way to the approaches that are needed from local and highway authorities, and then from the police authorities and police and crime commissioners. So I hope it'll, you know, I do feel there has been a significant loss of momentum in the last decade, but I do feel that there are some indicators of better progress ahead. So just very quickly, and thank you so much for your introduction. Action Vision Zero was formed in 2019, and we are much more so than RoadPeace. We are a very small organisation, and we absolutely work with other groups to support campaigners, elected representatives and local authority officers to move towards reduced danger on our roads. And although our name is Vision Zero, and that's very much because I think we thought very much that people had heard of Vision Zero, our approach is very much based around road danger reduction. And obviously we're grateful to all the work of Bob Davis and the Road Danger Reduction Forum in formulating those ideas. And so I'll touch on a number of subjects, but just to sort of say that we're going to cover off two things that we've been working on latterly. The first thing is the mayoral elections that took place in May 2021, and again working with local campaigners and a huge amount of support from a number of the local RoadPeace groups, and we're terribly grateful for that. And that was encouraging mayoral candidates again to set an end date for death and serious injuries on their roads. But obviously, as well as the target end date, it's much more about the policies that are needed and associated with that. And we'll talk about this a bit more in a while, but focus on Liverpool City region, Greater Manchester, West Midlands, West Yorkshire, London and Bristol. And then the other half of the work really, and in here, we're very grateful to Amy Aaron-Thomas, who I'm sure you all know very well from her time at RoadPeace, in bringing together a coalition, in particular of RoadPeace, 20's Plenty and Action Vision Zero and a number of other active travel organisations, really to support campaigners around the 40 police and crime commissioner elections that were occurring in the run up to May. So that's kind of the context of what we've been doing over the last 6 months, and it's been absolutely inextricably linked with the work of RoadPeace. Tremendous support from Vicky Lebrecq, obviously, with yourselves. So what has been going on over the last decade? So here's a sense of, just to try and give some numbers, just sort of put it into context. And number one is around, this first chart is around fatalities. And as you can see, there was from sort of 2000 to 2010, a significant decline in the number of people killed on the UK's roads, and then very clearly a halt to that decline in the last 10 years. In relation to serious injuries, fatalities and serious injuries, again, the pattern can be seen very clearly of a decline from the millennium, and then one, and this is in the case of reported road injuries, and I'll come on to the nuanced issues around that in just one second. But you can see in terms of reported road, serious and fatal road casualties, a decline up to 2010, and then generally a pattern of increase in the subsequent years. And obviously, exactly as Nick said, we need to take into account 2020. This only goes up to the full year of 2019. And then thirdly is a chart that just takes into account the change in reporting systems, moving towards injury-based reporting systems that started to take hold in police forces and Stats 19 data from 2016 onwards. And here, when it's adjusted for the change in injury reporting, a more rapid decline up to 2013, and then arguably a sort of a small decline then. But I think the general pattern holds of little progress in the last 10 years. So, so to try and sort of flesh that out and what's happened here, and I'm not going to go into this in huge detail, but I just thought it was really coincidental and valuable that the EU progress report from the European Transport Safety Council has just been published in the last week or so, which looks at performance across 32 European countries and Mediterranean countries on road safety. And what makes this really very authoritative is the commentary on the UK performances by David Davis of the Parliamentary Advisory Council on Transport Safety, who I'm sure, again, you all know. And then I put a link to this if you want to follow up on this in detail. So I think that the first thing to sort of highlight is that, I think we feel that there's a significant story to tell about lack of progress in overall, but I think it's important to set this into context of the UK remains the country with the fourth lowest mortality level of the 32 countries studied. So previously, Great Britain was in the absolute forefront of addressing casualty levels per million inhabitants. That is now superseded by countries like Norway and Sweden. But I think it's important to state that the number of fatalities per million inhabitants remains well below the EU average in the UK. That aside, however, it's important to look at the change in road deaths between 2010 and 2020. Obviously, for the UK and other countries, some of the 2020 data was provisional at the time of the report being put together. Here, we've seen the EU 27 average of a 37% decline in fatalities across the EU 27. However, in the UK, there's only been a 14% decline. And that's the second lowest, and the only country low was the Netherlands. So why is that? And I think we can turn very helpfully to the commentary that David Davis has put together. And genuinely, it pulls no punches. Overall, this was a decade of missed opportunities. The UK government did not make road safety a priority. It refused to set a national casualty reduction target. And it's probably no coincidence that when the coalition government came in 2010, one of their first actions in this area was to remove targets for casualty reduction. And that kind of, very much set the tone for the lack of progress that we've seen. This was then coupled with the decline in road policing, which in David's words, significantly undermined road safety enforcement and very much led to the work of RoadPeace Action Vision Zero and 20's Plenty around the most recent elections to try and get the profile of roads policing higher up the agenda again. And then another area is that local authorities in England were left to set their own agendas, but there was a context of budget cuts and competing priorities. And then with this element of lack of focus at the central government level, responsibilities increasingly handed over to the separate nations. So for example, Scotland, in its ambitions, did cut the drink drive limit and set the agenda for road safety framework with ambitious targets, which has latterly now just moved to Vision Zero. Wales, very excitingly, is very close now to moving towards a default 20-mile-an-hour speed limit across the nation, which is likely to come in from 2023, and they've done a huge amount of work to move that default. And then, and we'll go on to it a bit more in a moment, but in England itself, Transport for London, Highways England have adopted Vision Zero, and especially in the case of Transport for London, there are a range of very ambitious measures to attempt to deliver. It's not going perfectly in London with Transport for London, but the ambition is there, and there are significant reductions in casualties that have been made. And I think it's important to contrast, the lack of central ambition with just the ambition that the government had from 2010 for a car-fueled economy. And there was a number of moves that, again, have sort of almost incentivized the car-based economy, such as the removal of the fuel duty escalator from 2010, the move to SUVs, so heavier vehicles altogether with higher off the ground, harder to see around, and then just this continued explosion in registered vehicles from 34 million in 2010 now to, in 2020, 38.3 million. And as you can see from the annual traffic levels by road type, that sort of continued increase, but with a particular focus, and I've drawn the arrow here, on those BC and unclassified roads. And again, there's the significant impact of, from 2008, the advent of sat-navs, which served to increase capacity across the road network, but using C roads and unclassified roads and neighbourhood streets as a way of increasing capacity. And they've seen significant growth on those types of roads. And hence, and we'll see this in a minute, hence the interest in low traffic neighbourhoods as a way of trying to, for people and communities to take some of their roads back. So let's move on. I hope that's given a sense of what our view of the last 10 years has been. What are the approaches that can start to address this from local and highway authorities? So the Vision Zero approach we've taken is one that's, pretty well fixed really in terms of road danger reduction and safe systems, with a sort of slight twist to it. So I'm sure all of this will be very familiar to you. The focus on slower speeds, the focus on safe street design, especially around junctions and crossings, the need for safe space for cycling, in particular, protected cycle lanes on main roads, safe vehicles, and here very excitingly is the work that RoadPeace amongst other groups have done around lorry danger, but also the advent from 2022 and 2024 of intelligent speed assistance on new vehicles. The focus on less traffic, which I think is the element that we've sort of added to the safe systems approach, which I think is which research has shown is a very potentially significant one, that there is a sort of clear link between reductions in traffic levels and reduction in casualty levels, and then safe behaviours enforcement. I'll pick up on that a little bit more in a moment. And again, working across a whole number of groups, but in particular with RoadPeace groups in a number of areas, we developed local and highway authority manifestos around the Metro mayor elections in Liverpool City region, West Midlands, Greater Manchester and West Yorkshire, and of course London as well. And the characteristics of all of the common policies around these manifestos, and I think we'd sort of say this is a sort of a way to go for campaigning now, would be creating safe city centres and safe town centres and high street, especially after the pandemic, as town centres and high streets are where so much of life has been focused. Lower speeds, moving to the default 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, vigorous enforcement, and focusing on the high harm offences of speeding, drink and drug driving, careless driving, mobile phone use and uninsured vehicles, less traffic, as we've touched on, the importance of that, and then safe neighbourhoods. And then we'd argue a comprehensive programme of low traffic neighbourhoods. And I think there's, as well as those substantive policy changes, there's a whole issue around embedding Vision Zero into the work of the local authority. I think that, in New York, for example, when Vision Zero was adopted there in 2013, 2014, it actually became part of the team in the mayor's office, was the whole Vision Zero idea. And TfL worked really hard to embed it, but again, it's really important that it happens at from the most senior levels through to other levels of an authority. So where are we at the minute in terms of Vision Zero commitments? And obviously when we talk about the commitment, just as important are the policies to go with it. The target is important and setting a target, but the vital thing is the policies that go with it. So currently we have a number of authorities with target dates to end death and serious injury in 2050 in Scotland and Kent. Really exciting to see Kent adopting as a Shire county, adopting a Vision Zero approach. That's the first one that we know of there. And then Leeds, Highways England and London looking around 2040, 2041. And then following the work that, and all of our groups did in the lead up to the election, I think we've got good potential in Liverpool City region, Greater Manchester, West Midlands and West Yorkshire. And here's, just out of interest, there's the Vision Zero action plan that Transport for London produced in 2018. I'm not going to go through this, I promise, but then if you get the slides, here's a number of sort of policies that could be good to campaign for around each of those issues. So secondly, the approaches need the police authorities and police crime commissioners. And as I said, Amy really led this work and put, in conjunction with Vicky and Rod King at 20's Plenty, put together a fantastic campaign around the May elections. And the aim of the campaign was to do two things really: to give local campaigners the tools they needed to raise tackling road danger as an issue for the elections, and secondly, to inform the PCC candidates what's required from roads policing to give communities the safe roads they need. And obviously all that was in the context in many PCC areas of a reduction in roads policing over the past decade. And, again, an amazing coalition was put together of the three groups for Cycling UK, British Cycling, Sus Trans, Living Streets and Road Danger Reduction Forum. And there's a number of resources which, people find useful, hopefully. We did a lot of work around webinars, press releases and information about how each police authority compared with each other. And that's all there in the link below. This was the manifesto, Commit to Act on Road Danger. And then there were 5 elements to this. And obviously there's going to be crossover with what we talked about with the manifestos with the authorities, but making road danger reduction a priority in the PCC area, tackling speeding, the greatest threat, and the focus there, very much making sure that officer detected enforcement was around the 20 and 30 mile an hour roads and not just the arterial roads in urban areas. Being transparent and accountable, making sure that data and statistics are provided in a timely way that can allow for action to be taken, working with your community, using the expertise that community has in a positive way through, for example, third-party reporting. And this was very much the focus of contribution of RoadPeace, improving the post-crash response. So I hope that's given a flavour of that word. So what are the ways forward, and what do we sort of sum up this to be really? So the numbers of people killed and seriously injured on our roads are no longer falling. The focus from 2010 appeared to be on the growth of a car economy. But encouragingly, some local and highway authorities were and are now taking action to address this lack of ambition from the UK government. And I think the only thing I'd say, I think it's really important to recognise the positive post-COVID response from the UK government, sort of around May and July last year, where measures were enabled around encouraging walking and cycling as a response to the first lockdown. And I do get the sense that there is going to be some kind of announcement reasonably soon of a greater focus on this area by the UK government, perhaps in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think what's really important to stress is what works is really well known. So the safe systems approach this is not unknown territory. This is well-known territory, but all of this requires the dominance of the motor vehicle to be challenged. And what's really exciting is, especially in the current context of COP26 coming up, concerns around air quality, the desire to encourage communities to be more coherent, is all of this work in this Vision Zero approach and the policies associated. It all helps address poor air quality, reducing climate changing emissions, enabling walking and cycling and public transport, and improving communities. And and if this is something that RoadPeace groups would like to support, we think we now have a lot of good campaigning materials for working with local and highway authorities and PCCs. And obviously the context is such that the police and crime plans are going to be updated reasonably soon. And, you know, that work is ongoing by PCC, Police and Crime Commissioners. And obviously we'd love to give you any support that we can locally in the campaigning you do. So thank you so much for asking us to speak. We're really, really grateful. And again, I'm sure Simon and Nick will send, and Vicky will send this out with the slides, but here's some contact details if you want to get in touch with us. Thank you so much.
Jeremy, thank you as well. And so much to agree with in what you said. Just as Victoria's going to handle, to see if there are any questions from our audience. So Victoria, over to you if that's all right.
Hello, thank you very much, Jeremy. That was a fantastic presentation. We haven't had any questions come through just yet. So if people want to have any questions for Jeremy, then please put them in the chat box. I will kick things off and and ask you, you know, in terms of the local authorities which are potentials but haven't yet signed up to Vision Zero, what's your sense in terms of what's stopping them? Like, what are the reasons that they're putting forward?
I think there's two sides to this, really. I think there's the four authorities that we mentioned. I think that, you know, there was an awful lot of work done up to the you know, up to election day, and then I think since then, you know, I think we've kind of left them fallow, really, because there's been so much work for them to do to get organised. So, for example, Chris Boardman's role in Greater Manchester has really gone from a walking and cycling commissioner to a much more broad transport commissioner. I think, as I understand it, in West Yorkshire, the focus is really on trying to sort out bus franchises as the key issue there. So I think I think in those authorities that appeared to say they'd move to a Vision Zero approach, there's still work to do in the post-election period. Yeah, I think that's a really great question about how do we work with the others. I think it's about where are the places that are ripe for change, and I think it was unbelievably exciting that Kent, as a Shire county, have moved to this Vision Zero approach. And you know, the strategy they've put forward is not perfect, but it's got elements of real robustness, and I think that it's a kind of one of those things where, you know, if a Shire county like Kent, which has been, you know, has tended in the past to be very pro motor vehicle, you know, if those can, and I'm sure there's a whole load of other Shire counties can move as well, especially the ones that have shown interest in recent months around 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in particular. So I see Vision Zero and 20-mile-an-hour speed limits as default very much working together. Yeah, but I mean, if people have knowledge, let's tell us about it, and we'll try and help you in your campaigning.
Thank you, Jeremy. And we've had one question come through because it's all over the news. Do you have any concerns about e-scooters and how do they fit in?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting and current question. I think I think the story's starting to be told about the potential danger to people who are riding and people who are, you know, maybe in collision with someone who's riding an e-scooter. I think that, you know, I think there's a number of things here. I think there are legitimate concerns, and we're already starting to, you know, in London, starting to see serious injuries. But I think it's really, really important that we are careful in the response to calibrate that, and that, you know, and that we don't forget the issue of proportionality about where the greatest harm occurs, and the greatest harm will continue to be from motor vehicles in relation to people walking and cycling. It's, you know, so it's very much catching on a bandwagon with e-scooters, and obviously the key things are going to be making sure that they are limited to, you know, around 15 miles an hour. Really important that they stay on the carriageway and not on the pavement, and that they're ridden with consideration. But I do think it's important that we focus on the greatest source of danger to people, which remains motor vehicles.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. And I'll just do one final one, which is from Steve M, and he says that he accepts this as a difficult question to answer succinctly. But what do you think is the overriding reason for the steady reduction in road fatalities 10 years ago, and then why is it stalled?
Yes, gosh, I should have done a piece about why it was effective. Really, I'm sorry that was omitted because it's a really good point. I think there were. I mean, I think there was an element of low-hanging fruit. I think there was a lot of, and I think there were things that could be done that made a swift difference. I think there was quite a lot of focus on rural roads, which I think were improved, and then a lot of the improvements that were made and reductions occurred in vehicles. So the vehicle technology became safer, and people in vehicles. The proportion of people who were killed and seriously injured in vehicles fell more quickly than the people who were walking and cycling and outside, and obviously motorcycling as well. So I think there was an element of improvement in safety, but I think that, I think the government initiatives, I mean, there wasn't that rapid increase in traffic levels in the, from 2000 to 2010 that there was in the period after the, in the recovery from the financial crash. And I think, we will do some more on this, but there's a really interesting story that's been led by Todd Littman in Vancouver from the VTPI, who really has studied this link between traffic levels and the relationship between them and casualties, and where you have a rapid increase in traffic levels, it becomes so much harder to reduce casualty levels at the similar pace. But yeah, great question. We'll do some more work on that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. I think that's it for this section now.
So Jeremy, just from me, thank you so much again for that amazing presentation, and obviously we at RoadPeace look forward very much to continuing to collaborate. Thank you also for the questions. I know there was perhaps a couple of questions which we haven't quite got time to do, but we will make sure that those reach Jeremy and we will pass on the answers. I want to move forward now to the more formal part of the AGM. And just to begin, we've received apologies from the following members: Jeff James, Reverend Simon Wilson, Steve Booth, Jill Dowling, and Sutton, Councillor Ian Lewis, Jeff Baker, Matt Ooman, and Kira Lee. So those are the apologies. You should all have received a link to the minutes with your invitation, or they're also available on a link to the chat if you haven't. But may I ask if there are any matters arising? Our intention is to deal with approvals by dissent, but can I just ask, are there any matters arising? And unless anyone objects, we propose to approve the adoption of the minutes.
Nothing in the chat box currently, so.
Good. Well, in that case, let's approve the adoption of the minutes. Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to Nick Atkinson to deal with the financial report. Nick.
This is a task
Nick, you're on mute. We weren't on mute, and then you suddenly were on mute. Still on mute.
That started off mute. Here we go, got you. Yes.
There you go.
Right. Yes, this is a task that would normally fall to Cynthia, and I, like everybody else, wish her the best of health and recovery. And I don't know whether she's going to be able to watch this today or whether she's going to see the recording at a later stage, but we all wish her well. As far as the accounts are concerned, the thanks are due to Diona Sherwood of the DS Small Business Help Limited, who's prepared the accounts, and it is proposed to appoint DS Small Business Help Limited to continue as RoadPeace's reporting accountant. The trustees ensure that all activities undertaken support RoadPeace's charitable aims and are carried out correctly, as well as monitoring the level of funds retained on an ongoing basis to ensure that they are in line with our reserves policy. Income for the year ending the 31st of March 2021 was £259,053, an increase of just over £17,000 on the previous year. Expenditure for the year ending the 31st of March 2021 was £225,060, a decrease of some £57,219. This past year has been an extraordinarily unsettling and unsatisfactory year. The majority has been spent under lockdown, as we all know, and the huge level of uncertainty regarding fundraising potential, although we will hear later the achievements, more recent achievements, and challenges to all charities with funds diverted to respond to the pandemic. On behalf of the trustees, I'm pleased to report that on the whole, the financial picture is positive after a challenging and uncertain year, thanks due to a spread of income across different income streams, agility to put resources where they were needed to raise funds from different sources and adapt our fundraising strategy, cost savings to many areas, including office costs, and also money which we would normally spend on community fundraising events, and also the government's COVID response furlough scheme. A significant proportion of our expenditure continues to be on staff salaries to deliver our direct charitable activities, which are to provide support services and remembrance activities, support our members, and lobby and campaign for change, for better justice, for crash victims, and reduction of road dangers. I'd also like to acknowledge a generous legacy received this year from the estate of J. Calacione. Overall, the net difference for this year between income and expenditure was a surplus of just short of £34,000, of which nearly £32,628 are restricted funds and £1,366 are unrestricted funds. RoadPeace free reserves are £256,721. Charities are required to hold reserves equal to their reserves policy and should not hold excessive funds. They also need to use those funds to further the charitable objects. In light of the legacy, and because the expenditure is being managed, we will continue to draw down our reserves until they've hit a representative 3 to 6 month unrestricted expenditure. We are fortunate in the position as we have a small, agile team, and there is no cause for concern. At this time, the trustees and staff team will continue to work to mitigate the impact of the pandemic and adapting our revenue and expenditure models as necessary. To conclude, the organisation's total funds of the 31st of March 2021 are £302,489, of which £258,087 is restricted funds and £44,402 unrestricted funds. And if there are any questions that arise, I'm going to rely on the technology for those questions to be aired, and probably, almost certainly, rely on Sarah to answer them.
There don't seem to be any questions thus far, but if anyone's got any questions, please put them in the chat box.
As the chat box remains
empty.
Empty. This is very good news.
Yeah.
In the absence of any comments to the contrary, I propose to approve the adoption of the accountants. I suppose acting as the chair in the capacity of the chair for today, for this afternoon only, and in the absence of any comments to the contrary, I further propose to approve the appointment of the accountants that I mentioned at the beginning of the report.
Yep, no comments.
No comments. Well, I have had the advantage of seeing Victoria and indeed Nick. I don't know whether my face has appeared at all during this process.
Yes, your face is there.
Oh, well, I can only apologise for that then. For some reason, I haven't got it on my screen, but that's for me, it's a blessing.
Nick,
Now,
thank you
Nick,
so much for that.
do you want me to go on and deal with the trustee position?
Yes, please, sir. Yes, if that's all right. Yes.
Right. The position at the moment is the board of trustees consists of 10. 2 or 3 years ago, when I attended an annual meeting, hadn't been for a number of years, and there weren't very many trustees. Well, now we've had a flood of trustees who bring different skills to the board, and we're very grateful for those people who are there. And indeed, we have Brigitte Chowdhury, who was the founder of RoadPeace, who lost her son, was killed in 1990, and he was 26 years of age. Cynthia Barlow lost her only child 10 years later, and that child was also 26 years of age. There is a link on the website to the trustees' biographies, which you can always refer to. Ilma Brogdon was a car crash survivor who has life-changing injuries. Pauline Fielding, who is a very active member of the board and runs the Northwest group, and is almost impossible to track down sometimes because she'll be advising or helping some individual or some organization. Her son was killed some years ago. David Frost, as a child, was injured in a crash that resulted not only in severe injuries to himself, but the loss of both his parents. Petra Kendall Rayner was touched by the deaths on the road, by the death of her father, who was a pedestrian. Matt Ullman, lost his brother-in-law, and Alexandra Swan, 2 close friends, led her to be involved with RoadPeace. And so you can see that what brought these trustees into the sphere of RoadPeace and their real concern about trying to improve matters. Additionally, there's Rad Seeger, who you will have become aware of in recent months, who is a solicitor and has been involved in advising and assisting Harry Dunn's family. Harry Dunn being the young man who was killed on a motorbike by a car driven by somebody allegedly protected by diplomatic immunity. The other trustee is myself, fortunately not touched in any way by these deaths of a relative or a family member, but simply somebody who was involved with court proceedings. And it became very clear to me that there was an awful lot wrong with the law in 1990s. And I spoke at the launch of RoadPeace in the early 90s, became a patron, and I'm not sure, there have been some improvements, but not nearly enough. It's a slow process, whether it's in the criminal courts or in the coroner's inquest procedures. I remained involved with RoadPeace quite actively for about 15 years, and then apparently disappeared from view, now only returning like Banquo's ghost. At this stage, Cynthia Barlow, Pauline Fielding, and I should say Pauline Fielding, MBE, and Alexandra Swan are all up for re-election. Rad Seeger was co-opted onto the board during the past year and is formally standing for election today. Myself, Elmar, David, Petra, and Matt were elected for 2-year term last year and as such are not due for election this year. In the absence of any comments to the contrary, I ask the meeting to elect the aforementioned to continue to work as trustees on for RoadPeace. We also need to, well, we should be reappointing honorary officers, but we're currently without a secretary or a treasurer. Our current chair, Cynthia, will continue as the chair of RoadPeace, and I propose that she too is elected again as chair for RoadPeace. That, I think, is all I need to say about the trustees, Nick. Probably more than I need to say, probably, but there we are. There.
I think what you said was splendid and very helpful. Victoria, can I just check with you?
Yeah, there's nothing in the comments box.
Well, this is very good news.
Nick, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And
Pleasure.
If it's all right, what we will do now is move on to the impact report, which I'd like to take the organisation through. So just to begin, this is RoadPeace in numbers, and what I think we can do here is deliver a message of growth, which I hope you'll find encouraging. As Nick mentioned before, one of the key things we'll be able to do is strengthen our board. This time last year we had 8 trustees. We now have 10 trustees of very able individuals who bring some wide-ranging skills to the organisation. The other thing that's happened in terms of numbers is we've established some board subcommittees dealing with finance, income generation, support, and policy and campaigns. And they help us deliver and deal with some of the large number of issues that RoadPeace has to define positions on. In terms of numbers, staff has also grown. This time last year we had 6 staff. It's 7 this year, and that is made up of 3 full-time staff and 4 people who don't work full-time, they work part-time. Typically that's 3 days a week. The other number that's growing is our members and supporters. We have plans to make this grow more significantly in the future, but at the moment we have 1,268. And increasingly in terms of revenue and income, commercial partners grow. We have 13 legal panel members and 10 business members who all generate financial support for RoadPeace. And in the last 12 months, where traditional fundraising has been so challenging, it's been a very important way of keeping this organisation financially solvent. And then really importantly, from a RoadPeace perspective, is our volunteers. Our befrienders do such amazing work, and we've grown the number of befrienders from 22 to 26. We have 2 group facilitators and grow our local group coordinators as well, and we are incredibly grateful to them. Just to move on and talk a little bit about community fundraising, and I just wanted to put this in perspective, and I hope it's helpful. As I say, effectively fundraising was stopped by the pandemic and lockdowns, so our income reduced by over 70%. And in terms of that perspective, previously income was growing annually at around 25%. So you'll just see the numbers there in terms of actual income in 2018 and 2019. The target for 2020 was 80,000. And the actual amount we achieved was 17,000. So those have had a very dramatic impact. I wanted just to share, and I know you will know these, but these are the traditional community fundraising events that members and supporters and volunteers take part in and generate so much revenue for RoadPeace, and we're very grateful. And I'm hopeful that those will return to normality very shortly. In the meantime, we have a number of marathon and running events taking place here in particular. If anyone watching our AGM today has an interest themselves in taking part, or knows someone else that would like to be involved, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will be delighted to put them in touch. Moving on and talking about regional RoadPeace now, and I think as we've acknowledged so often in the past, and we can't really acknowledge them enough, our local groups are so important from RoadPeace's perspective. We have 6 local groups at the moment. They are in London, the West Midlands, the East Midlands, West Mercia, North West and South West. We're developing our local groups, and we have good reason to feel confident that groups in South Wales, North East, North Yorkshire and Scotland, and of course we formerly had groups in Scotland and the North East, and we're working hard to restructure those, and I think the signs are very encouraging there. In terms of those local groups and meetings in this last year, we've held 43 meetings, which is an increase over the previous year. And also on this slide, you'll see our befriender service has grown. We now have 26 befrienders providing our amazing peer-to-peer support. And we've been able to support more victims, 62 this year. And we have delivered our resilience building service as well. This is something we would like to do much more and move to other parts of the UK, but we ran 2 programmes on Merseyside and also on Avon and Somerset over the year in question. I wanted to talk just briefly about our helpline and share again the trend there in terms of increased calls to our helpline for both bereaved and injured. I know that number other is down, but it's because we're slightly more efficient now in terms of how we categorise and file those numbers, but the overall number of calls and contacts with our helpline continues to grow. One of our key deliverables is helping victims to be more able to cope and to be better informed. And casework is such an important part of what RoadPeace delivers. Over the last 12 months, we supported 49 victims in depth, and we also supported many, many more who responded and were answered to questions via our website and other sort of frequently asked questions ways. We also produced 2 new guides. They were done in London with funding from MOPAC, and they were around road death investigation and also life-changing or life-threatening collisions. And you can see those new guides if you want to. They're on our website if you want to know more about them. Moving on to the West Mercia project. This is a new support and information service. It's a pilot and it's for victims of serious injury in Shropshire, Telford and Regan. It's been funded by the West Mercia Police and Crime Commission. We have a 1-year proof of concept project. We are very eager and optimistic that this proof of concept is delivered and we can extend this to other PCCs across the UK. The services there include a dedicated care coordinator, the introduction of a new support group, a resilience building programme and new information guides as well, all key core RoadPeace deliverables. And we are genuinely very excited to be involved in that project and the benefits that we think it will deliver. In terms of victims remembered and honoured, we were able to hold 3 World Day of Remembrance online services with over 2,000 views. We managed to run an online event for the RoadPeace Wood, and as you know, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do something face-to-face and in person later this year. And of course, our other remembrance activities are just so important. It's such a key part of what RoadPeace does in terms of remembrance. But we were sending out memorial plaques to crash sites and anniversary cards to our members as well. Moving to our thought leadership, obviously over the past year, face-to-face meetings haven't happened, but our webinars have actually delivered some very effective outcomes and they've been very well attended. So there's a sort of slight plus side to that. So we delivered 6 webinars on justice for crash victims, empowering local communities and road danger reduction, the highway code changes and civil compensation, and the police and crime commission's elections, which Jeremy mentioned earlier on. We've also made some submissions to the coroner inquiry, which seem to have been well received and have had a powerful impact. And responded to 4 consultations, making sure that we consult with our members and we give a response that represents the views of our organisation and our members' thoughts. And those have been around mobile phones, the Highway Code, the Police Review, and the Victims Code. Some very, very important work there. In terms of influencing others, an important campaign for clocks in September. We were working to influence local authorities to sign up to clocks and reduce the risk of death and injury from construction vehicles. You've heard several times the PCC elections, which has been an important piece of work for us. And we also engaged very effectively with the candidates for the London mayoral elections. And again, as ever, I think our message was well received and difficult to be contentious when we raise it with politicians. They tend to agree and support and find ways of supporting us. Awareness is, again, such an important issue for RoadPeace because the more people know about the organisation, then the more help and support we can provide. So when we talk about awareness, it is to make sure the name RoadPeace is more known and we can reach out and support people at the earliest possible opportunity. Social media is an important communications channel, and I'm pleased to report that in terms of Twitter and Facebook, we have more followers this year than we had last year. And we've been very effective, I think, on the media as well, in terms of increasing national coverage, making sure that the victim's voice is delivered on the key news channels. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we'll do over the next year here at RoadPeace, just in terms of sharing with you our plans and our ambitions. So for us, it's very important to continue to grow our sustainable income and to raise awareness of RoadPeace. We want to strengthen our existing relationships and build new ones with key stakeholders who can introduce victims as promptly as possible. So we want to work more with FLOs and we want to work more with the NHS. A key task is to strengthen, to grow and support our local groups. To help achieve that, we want to work more closely with our legal panel members and our regional structure. And we want support in key areas to develop local groups. So just Cardiff, Southampton, Manchester, North Yorkshire and Newcastle are particular areas that we plan to focus on. We want to increase the number and the diversity of members of RoadPeace and those who access our services as we return to more face-to-face activity. And I want to see that we work with our newly established support subcommittee to grow support services, introducing a national online injured group, and to work more with the injured generally, including new support groups in London and North Yorkshire. And I mention those just because we have secured funding to support those, so we know that will happen. And the more funding we can secure, then the more of those groups we will run. I'm also excited to report that we plan on introducing wellbeing support for our members, volunteers and staff. It's part of our ongoing conversation with our members and our volunteers. We're launching an exciting programme designed to support members through challenging times and help them move forward. It'll be a free service available to all members. Members will be able to access an itinerary of group introduction sessions, one-to-one counselling and life coaching sessions. Over the next month, members, volunteers, coordinators and facilitators are invited to help shape this innovative new programme. And David, who's a RoadPeace trustee, will be leading on this, and he'll hold Zoom meetings and telephone calls with members to give you an opportunity to help us shape and ensure that this serves you as best as it possibly can. But I think it's fair to say that we're optimistic and excited about the benefits that that will deliver. And then just finally, in terms of our impact report, we obviously need to focus on developing some of our campaigning points, and the launch of the Truth investigation is absolutely key on that. And we also plan on using more evidence-based content in our work to help reform the justice system. I hope I didn't rush through that too quickly. But thank you for listening. Can I ask if there are any questions around our impact report? Victoria, as ever, I'm handing over to you to handle the whole question thing. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yes, so this one is one from Lucy, who's our West Midlands local group coordinator. She said, I've just read RoadPeace is raising funds for a memorial / monuments, which she didn't know about. Why has this not been publicised? Is this something people can donate specifically towards? Will members be consulted at all as to what the monument is, or has it already been designed?
I hope I cover that a little bit in the introductory remarks. And just to be very clear, in terms of how that has been funded, we're using a long-standing fund that was specifically set up for the National Memorial to pay for it. It's a project that's been led and managed by our trustees and our board. We're excited about unveiling the monument, hopefully in August.
Thank you. And there's another one again around remembrance. Is it possible to get an update on what is happening with trees at the Arboretum? Yeah, there's some people in the West Midlands group who've been asking about this for some time. And when they've contacted the Arboretum, they were told there'll be no more RoadPeace trees.
Yes, I'm very, very sorry to report, and we found this out just a while ago, and I did update trustees on this. The NMA recently confirmed that they are no longer accepting the dedication of new trees at the RoadPeace Wood. I think they have plans to extend more memorials into that area. I think it's fair to say it's been a little bit of a challenging time to have communications with the NMA, but things are much better now, and we are working on a very clear memorandum of understanding in terms of how things go forward. And I'm optimistic that things will be much better, but I'm very sorry to report that point on the trees. I know that's not good news.
Thanks, Nick. And then one final one, which is about membership. Looking at the figures, it looks like the amount raised through membership is roughly the same from last year to this year. What is the plan to grow membership? And is it possible to see a breakdown? Sorry, the chat box has just moved. Is it possible to see a breakdown of membership at all? E.g., how many by region, how many by type of loss, etc. It would help local group coordinators to know where RoadPeace isn't reaching as many people as we could, and then we could think about specific projects.
I think in terms of a quick response, and I might respond in more detail every moment, but yes, we can certainly provide that breakdown, and we will do that for our local group coordinators. And there's a very, very clear plan to grow membership, and I think what we're very keen to do is to try and launch a new friend scheme this year, which we hope will attract people who are concerned about road danger and haven't necessarily had a personal involvement in a life-changing road collision, but are keen to support RoadPeace. So yes, the answer is yes to both those points, and we'll provide a bit more detail very shortly in due course. Great, thank you. I think there's a few more actually, so we'll just, I think we've got enough time. We are often told RoadPeace needs to be careful financially. Why did RoadPeace decide to move to another office rather than go completely remote, at least for a temporary period, when it seems like there is still much remote working going on? So yeah, why did we move office is the question. Yeah, and may I just acknowledge, just in terms of obviously being on the spot here and answering these questions, I think it might be useful to sort of, for me to reflect and answer them in a bit more detail after the meeting. But we certainly did some research, and we didn't think the organisation was able, for all sorts of reasons, to work remotely. We monitor that. I mean, it may well change at some point, but we absolutely need an office to run all of our systems and for the organisation to function effectively. So we did think about remote working. We couldn't quite make it add up then. We might be able to in the future, but I'm not sure. Thank you.
There is a very real sense that the justice work done by RoadPeace previously has lessened significantly. What reassurance is there that justice remains important to RoadPeace and that victims are at the heart of the organisation? Further, is there a guarantee that supporting victims is the #1 priority and that all referrals are actioned as a top priority?
Yes, I mean, I don't want to be clear, but yes, all referrals are actioned. I think I might even throw this back to you in a moment, which I know is slightly unfair, Victoria, but in terms of your campaigning and policy roles. But before I do that, I mean, justice is so important to RoadPeace, and I suppose the thought in my head is that, you know, I'm very lucky that we still talk frequently and engage and keep our president and founder Brigitte Chowdhury informed of how this organisation, you know, is moving forward and what our strategic challenges are. And I don't put words in her mouth. I believe she is confident that we are still treating justice as the priority that, of course, we should. But and I think in our campaigns and in our sort of our plans for the year ahead, you know, we absolutely want to use more evidence-based content to support our justice. I'm sorry to throw this back at you, but is there anything?
No, that's right. I think that's correct. I think, you know, we should recognise that I'm now, you know, doing a role that's around the campaigning and policy work. I think previously, before we had that role, we had Amy was doing that role, and we also had Mark volunteering, which was, you know, obviously much more resource and capacity to do that in terms of monitoring changes in the justice system. We've got a plan, and it's included within the business plan in terms of continuing that work. So I guess there's an assurance there. I hope that answers the question, and I think we'll reflect and come back to members as well with a more detailed response, because there's quite a few different areas on that. Another question, I think, which is a bit more on this topic, can RoadPeace clarify what % of staff time is allocated to justice as opposed to other key areas?
I suppose the answer has to be yes. I'm not sure I can do it right now on the spot, but yes. I suppose the key thing I want to say is justice is an absolutely core, very important part of RoadPeace. And we do allocate a lot of time and resource to it. And I'll follow up with a slightly more detailed response to that in terms of what those percentage points are.
Okay, how are we doing on time? On time, have we got more time for questions?
I think we maybe could do one more question or whatever, but I think we probably, in terms of the timetable, we are probably supposed to move on. But I don't. Okay. This one. If there are any other questions we haven't answered, I absolutely assure people that we will follow up and respond to them and share that with the wider. Okay. One final question then. What training is given to trustees to ensure accurate and consistent understanding of their role? I suppose one of our big achievements over the past 12 months has been to finally deliver an induction programme for trustees, which was an incredibly constructive and helpful process from my perspective. I'm looking at Nick, and but I think it might be unfair to drag him back into the conversation. I think we are doing a much better job around induction and making sure our trustees know more about this organisation. I think it's delivered some real powerful benefits. Nick, did you want to come in on that, or? Yes, you drag me in if I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Yes, consider yourself dragged in. Right, I consider myself dragged in. I briefly dealt with the trustees' backgrounds in relation to their motives for being involved in RoadPeace, which is very important. I deliberately did not go through their various qualities of what they can contribute, largely because I knew I was going to have to deal with myself in the list, and my contribution
can only be described as minimal. But these other trustees are extremely active and full of ideas. And as I say, on the website, you can learn more about their expertise. I'm just been a spectator to the failings of the legal system for as many years as I practiced, and the failings in relation to coroners' courts. We've got a report now about coroners' courts, which RoadPeace contributed substantially to, and a lot of the recommendations made by RoadPeace have been adopted in that report. Of course, a report is one thing, action is quite another. And we can't sit back and applaud the fact that they know that we're right. We have to pursue them and the authorities to make sure those recommendations are brought into effect.
Nick, thank you. And I just to add, in terms of that induction process, from my perspective, one of the most important things we did was to make sure that our new trustees met members, met our volunteers, and listen to them as well. And I think that was a very effective and powerful process as well. I think, if it's all right, we should move on now. Just on, as ever, if anyone has more questions, don't hesitate to contact me. And I make this point in our regular e-newses. I'm really happy to have conversations and to make sure that all of our members are fully informed and have all their questions answered. Anyway, moving on, and it's now my genuine pleasure to help present the 2021 Mansoor Chowdhury Award for an outstanding contribution to RoadPeace. This award is now in its 5th year. It was launched to commemorate RoadPeace's 25th anniversary in 2017. And of course, it's named after the son of our founder, Brigitte Chowdhury, MBE. The recipient this year is someone who has consistently been an advocate for road danger reduction, for victims' rights and public service. And most recently, he has completed an astonishing 200-kilometre run, raising not only funds for RoadPeace, but awareness of our work across the country, and raising a staggering £53,000. He ended this challenge with a call to action video, which I'd like us to show you now. Detective Chief Superintendent Andy Cox.
So tomorrow's the last day of my 200-kilometre run to raise money for RoadPeace and awareness of road danger, but I really hope it's the start of a road danger conversation. For too long, we've accepted 5 people dying and 60 people being seriously injured on our roads in the UK every single day. Road death is not inevitable, it can be prevented. That will need leadership, politically leadership across every road safety stakeholder, and the public needs to be part of the solution. I think MPs can read out the names of everybody that's lost their life the previous year in a road crash. It'd be very respectful to the people that died, but it also raise the issue into social conscience. It would also help influence legislation and really make it a priority across every sector. I do think we need to look at the issue of the length of driving bans. So often I see somebody take a life or somebody else through dangerous driving, but get their licence back in a relatively short period of time. I do think it should not be seen as an absolute entitlement to drive. We have to pass tests for a reason, to demonstrate safety. We should put safety first above that individual's right to drive. We see the exceptional hardship defence being deployed successfully by defendants who have 12 points or more, citing their financial or personal circumstance. But where's the bereaved family's voice in that? What about the risk these people continue to pose despite the fact they've already had multiple opportunities to reflect and learn their lesson? We need to look at manufacturers, less talk of 0 to 60, more talk about safety. Built-in technologies to help reduce and limit speed. And issues such as dashcam being standard fit and black box technology being standard fit. Likewise, insurers can incentivise usage of black box technology and of dashcam usage as well. I think if we look at the media, we often see the word accident used. Road death is often driver fault, so therefore not an accident. We need to have right terminology, words matter. We prefer crash or collision. I know bereaved families feel that way as well. I've really struggled, despite the fact it's Global Road Safety Week, to get onto national media, with some exceptions, but I have contacted some high profile media outlets and not been able to get my voice heard during this run and during the relevant week with all these people still dying. I wanted to close by saying thank you so much to everybody that supported me ran with me, donated. It meant a huge amount to both myself and to RoadPeace. And I really hope RoadPeace have a strong funding provision going forward. Again, I hope this is not the end, but I hope it's the start of a new journey for them.
Andy, could I invite you to join us? Could I once again just thank you so much for all you've done and congratulate you. We're excited for the future as well, but would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nick. And I've got the trophy here actually, so I should just show everybody that as well. So thank you for sending that through the post. It's going to sit very nicely in my cabinet for the rest of the time. So thank you so much. And but I want to start by saying thank you ever so much for inviting me. Obviously, it's a huge honour to receive this award. Just listening to the whole meeting and the objectives you've got and the plans you've got, I think just endorse everything I tried to achieve really in terms of supporting yourself as an agency and a charity, but also the whole message around road dangers. I know so many members who are dialed into this meeting obviously are bereaved and have had tragic experiences themselves. And ultimately what I did was to try and raise money so we can support future bereaved families through yourself. You're doing an absolutely amazing job, and I want to come to your team in a second. But also obviously arguably more importantly, raise the whole issue of road danger and change that culture that we have out there and reduce the amount of devastation impact that we see daily on our roads. And so much of this can be prevented, as I said in that short video, which I won't rehearse now again. But whilst I'm getting this award, I want to really stress that this was very much a team effort. So, Sarah, Vicky, Simon from RoadPeace, Rebecca from Road Safety Support, Kira Lee, who helped and was often the brains of the outfit, I have to say, in terms of designing the route and the event, and also support me helping in terms of that video, creating that call to action there. So very much a team effort. Whilst I sometimes get the recognition, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the people that really made this a huge success in the background. So thank you to everybody involved. I know a few on the line, so thank you to those personally involved. And it was amazing to meet so many people during the run who came forward with stories that they had, to run with people, to just meet people, who expressed their gratitude is essentially what we're trying to do. And I think the coverage it got has started a debate. I do see more discussion now out there. It does ultimately need to lead to things like the call to action being delivered, things like Jeremy spoke through earlier being delivered. We do need to see that change. And I think that's about leadership politically across every sector. Policing have got a massive role to play in this as well. So everybody's really got to push the agenda forward. But I think if I can just talk about, as I said in that video, I didn't want this to be the end. I wanted it to be the start of something. So we are designing a bigger, better, bolder challenge for 2022. I'm not sure it's going to involve me running 200 kilometers, I've got to say. But I'm already in discussions with every force, or with the leads for forces within the UK. I do think we'll be able to put an event where every police service steps up in the UK. We invite others to be part of it as well. We set a much bigger funding target for next year. I don't want to get too cocky, so I'm not going to suggest how much at the moment, but I think it's going to be substantially more than raised this year. And what I want to be achieved from that, that your staff get properly recognised for the amazing job that they do. We need to retain those staff and deliver what success to them, essentially. But also in terms of, you talk about the support groups you're currently providing. I think if that can become more frequent, more localised as well. And obviously what I want to try and do is raise a huge amount of money in terms of giving you more scope to support families and people, more scope to campaign, which, we've heard about the justice elements of it. If we can provide a stronger funding provision, then of course you'll have more scope to achieve many of the things that you would so desire to achieve. So I'm extremely optimistic about the future in terms of what can happen next year and beyond in terms of funding support for you. Very committed to that, but ultimately really, really committed to the agenda. So, I did say I wasn't going to talk through it, but I'm going to mention one thing. So exceptional hardship as an example. I'm already linked in with some key people offline subsequent to that call to action to try and really genuinely end that disgraceful legislation, which affects, frankly, safety on our roads, but also the whole deterrent factor, and is fundamentally wrong for justice. So there's one example, and today, and it's only today, we've just launched our national dashcam approach in policing, which is something I've been pushing behind the scenes to really make that happen as well. So we are seeing some progress. I think there is some opportunities going forward, but fundamentally, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that donated, that supports me in the background. I should also point out that I said at the start, before we did the challenge, and I insisted to everybody that was working on it, that at no point should anything that the challenge do distract them from their core job. So the people that worked on this undoubtedly went the extra mile beyond their core function to make this happen and then provide the success and the voice that it had. So I just wanted to make sure everybody online really was aware of that. And that would certainly be looked to be the case, of course, going forward as well. So thank you so much, Nick. Thank you, obviously, for those that made this award happen. And it's a real pleasure being here today. Thank you.
Andy, thanks again, not only for the funds, but for raising the voice. You're definitely entitled to put your feet up and have a little bit of a rest. But then we're all genuinely excited about what we can do with this next year. I'm looking forward so much to working with you. But thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
And now, as we come towards the end of this afternoon's event, I'd like to pass over to Pauline Fielding. Pauline is one of our trustees, and she's also our Northwest Group Coordinator. Just before I introduce her, I just also wanted to acknowledge, and on behalf of everyone here, congratulate Pauline on her thoroughly well-deserved MBE, which she was awarded at the start of the year. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And again, congratulate you, Pauline, but now ask if you will read us in the moment of silence and guide us through the act of remembrance in memory of all crash victims. So Pauline Fielding.
Thank you very much, Nick. I would like to dedicate my MBE to my son, Andrew, who was killed in a car crash 27 years ago this week by a driver who didn't stop and who was never traced. But I would also like to thank all those who have helped me to achieve this. Without the help of family, friends, and so many others in RoadPeace, I would not have been receiving this award. Sincere thanks to you all. And I would also like to thank today's inspirational speakers, Jeremy for all his work with Action Vision Zero, Andy Cox for all that he has done, and for his call to action. That is so important. I'd like to thank Brigitte and all the staff over the many years who have worked through RoadPeace, together with all the volunteers, all the trustees, and also people like Alistair Hampton, who sadly passed away recently. All their work has been so important, and together we can make a difference. So let us all follow their lead so that we each do whatever we can to ensure the day when there are no more deaths and injuries on the road comes sooner rather than later. Now I'm going to read a piece called Moment of Silence, which was written by Rochelle Sabel, whose son was killed in a bus crash in Turkey over 20 years ago. Perhaps the moment of silence that we are about to observe in memory of our loved ones who perished in road crashes will not be a moment of silence at all. Perhaps in this moment, we will allow ourselves to hear the echo of the voices of family members, friends, and colleagues whose voices we have ached to hear, many of us for long and painful years. Perhaps their voices will urge us to remain impatient, indeed to grow even more impatient, to continue to petition, protest, advocate, convene, measure, enact, enforce, until that promise that we all carry in our hearts will be fulfilled. The promise that someday beautiful lives will no longer end abruptly and senselessly on the roads of the world. Perhaps they will encourage us if we are feeling that our gains are too small, advances too slow, and our work too fraught with challenges. Perhaps they will assure us that important progress has been made by the World Road Safety community, and that progress has been remarkable. The momentum is growing, palpable, and inspiring. Perhaps they will congratulate us on the efforts and vision of this alliance, which is already and will surely become a powerful and resounding collective force for road safety. They will surely remind us of the preciousness of each moment, the unique, irreplaceable beauty of each individual, the fragility and tenuousness of life, the devastation that a split second can bring, and our sacred responsibility to make this a road-safe world for all. We honour the memory of those who died in road crashes. They shatter our hearts, strengthen our resolve, and compel us to action. Let us listen to their voices as we remember them in silence. Please join in the refrain, we will remember them. We remember. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember them. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer. We will remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Thank you.
Pauline, thank you very much indeed for that. And thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for our AGM. Can I ask that you please leave any comments or feedback in that chat box, and we will also be sending you a short feedback survey. We'd love to hear your thoughts on how the event went and how it can be improved. Please do feedback your thoughts. Our next event will be our RoadPeace Wood, which we hope can be in person. The date will be up on the screen, and we'll be in touch with more details soon. But in the meantime, thank you once again for joining us today. Thank you.